In just 1 week, Canada will know how far President-elect Donald Trump is willing to go with his threats of imposing tariffs on Canadian goods and products. And while Ottawa has struggled to maintain a united front amid the Prime Minister's resignation, some of the country's premiers have stepped up. Ontario Premier Doug Ford has been outspoken about his willingness to cut power to parts of the U.S. should these tariffs come into play. But Alberta's leader, Danielle Smith, is singing a different tone. Tessa Bennett is in studio with the latest. Tessa, what is Smith's stance on the issue?
Manisa, after a weekend trip to Mar-a-Lago, Smith is emphasizing the importance of a tariff-free relationship. This comes in response to the federal government's willingness to use Albertan oil as a bargaining chip with Trump's administration.
It's not my decision to make on tariffs, but we do need to be preparing ourselves for the fact that they're likely to come in on January 20th.
Donald Trump is a week away from making his return to the White House, and Canadians are eager to learn which of his threats the president plans to make good on. The primary concern is the looming addition of 25% tariffs on Canadian goods. Canadian officials are reportedly working on a list of items that the U.S. exports to Canada, targeting specific products that will cause economic damage south of the border.
We are the #1 export partner of about 35 different U.S. states, and anything that thickens the border between us ends up costing American citizens.
As a last resort, Canada could levy a tax on energy products like oil exported to the States.
The reason or the rationale for him imposing the tariffs is supposedly the imbalance in trade that we're getting to our advantage because of the energy we ship to them.
When asked about the retaliatory tariffs on CTV's question period on Sunday, Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly implied the government was exploring every option.
Everything is on the table, and that's the conversation we will have, the Prime Minister, Minister LeBlanc, and myself, with the premiers next week.
Most of the country's officials seem to be on board with the retaliatory measure, but Alberta Premier Danielle Smith has made a stand in protest of banning oil exports. Smith visited Trump's Mar-a-Lago property over the weekend alongside Kevin O'Leary, saying on social media they had a friendly and constructive conversation during which she emphasized the mutual importance of the U.S.-Canadian energy relationship.
Oil and gas is owned by the provinces, principally Alberta, and we won't stand for that. And you should never, ever threaten something you cannot do.
But the fundamental challenge there is the political difference between Ottawa and Alberta. We need to speak with one voice, and that's going to be extremely difficult.
Smith did acknowledge the need for a response to these economic measures, but suggested alternative methods rather than limit Alberta's energy exports. The issue of exporting energy was something Ontario Premier Doug Ford picked up on last month, threatening to cut off the power supply to northeastern states should Trump's tariffs become a reality. And in a news conference on Monday, he responded to Smith's opposition to this plan.
Let me be very clear. I'm speaking for Ontario. I'm not speaking for Alberta. I'm not speaking for Premier Smith. When our province is under attack economically, you just don't roll over. You know, maybe I come from a different school. I believe in negotiating through strength, not weakness.
Questions have been swirling that the Premier might choose to hold an early election, wanting a mandate from Ontarians to fight the expected tariffs. The Premiers will meet with the Prime Minister this week to discuss the impending economic force.
The Premiers certainly have stepped into the breach more than they otherwise would, given the circumstances of the federal government, but they need to speak with one voice as well.
On a separate note, the list of Liberal leadership candidates is shrinking. 2 more ministers say they're not running for the party's vacant position. Both Transport Minister Anita Anand and Labour Minister Stephen McKinnon have bowed out.